Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. How are you all? Anyway, this is Laura Rotter, and I'm really excited because she's so smart. So Laura Rotter, CFA, CFP, is the owner of True Abundance Advisors, a heart-centered, values-based financial planning firm based in New York. After a successful career managing money for institutional investors, including Citicorp and Para Advisors, Laura discovered mindfulness practices and was drawn to guide professionals facing a big life change to achieve both financial security and life satisfaction. Since making her shift, she has been featured on CNBC, The Wall Street Journal, and Westchester Senior Voice, is on the Advisory Council of Impact 100 Westchester, a women's group giving organization, and the investment committee of the Hebrew Free Burial Association, and volunteers with My Money Workshop, teaching financial literacy to underserved communities. Wow. I love people who love finance since I hate it. I just love it. I'm so glad you guys love it and want to teach us about it. That's fantastic. Hi, Alberta. Nice to see you. So go ahead, Laura. Do you want to have an opening question in the chat for people that they can put in there that'll give you a feeling of what everybody here is, where we are? That helpful to you,
Leslie? First of all, thank you for that great introduction, and thanks everyone for making the time during your busy days to be here. I wanted to start with a very short centering practice. So if everyone could uncross their legs and feel both your feet on the floor, on the ground, mine are on a pillow to raise me up, and please I invite you to put your palms either in your lap or on your thighs. And you could either close your eyes or just briefly glance down. And let's take a deep breath and arrive here in this moment. When you breathe in, you might feel that the breath is sort of cool against your nostrils. And then as you exhale, feel the warmth of the air leaving your body. Take another breath in. And now I invite you to open your eyes. We're always rushing from thing to thing, from task to task. And so I always love just bringing us back together here. I'd love to go around what looks to me as a bit of a circle. And it would be great if you could just introduce yourselves and quickly say why you decided to join us here on this webinar. And then to sort of give us the perspective of where we all are. What have you learned, anything that comes to mind over these last 2+ years of this COVID pandemic that you'd like to share? So I'm going to call on people as I see them. So Melinda, would you mind starting us off? Just what caught your eye about this workshop and anything that you feel like you'd like to share?
Well, the last 2 years has certainly been a time of knowing plans change suddenly and you can make new ones. I closed my business after 4.5 years and went back to work for someone else that I love working for recently. So that is a big change. I didn't expect to be an employee again at 60.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. Lisa Schuller.
Hi, everyone. So the last 2 years has been incredibly change focused. And so looking for information. For me personally, I went into business for myself in January of 2020, like right before COVID hit. I'm a career success and workplace empowerment coach. So I really, and consultant and speaker, I help people figure out how they can change the way they're experiencing work or move on to a workplace that's going to make them the most successful. So I talk to people all the time about what's possible at workplaces. I love the fact that I'm seeing companies really opening up to how we do work differently, and employees demanding that we work differently. So I think there are so many nuances and so many changes going on that can be scary, but they can also be very exciting. So that's what drew me to the topic, is I wanted to hear what other people were experiencing during the Great Resignation and making sure I'm staying updated on all of the targets and all of the things that are happening. So that's mine.
Oh, thank you, Lisa. And it really resonated with me. I have like the little quote under this being the Great Resignation that I always think about, which is everyday bravery for meaningful living. I mean, it takes a certain amount of bravery to recreate at any point in our lives. Andrea Weinreb.
Hey, everybody. Hi, Leslie. I totally am attempting to reinvent myself after having a 40 plus year career in advertising, which I adored and loved and was great at, but the business has changed. And COVID made me realize it. You know, people were paying less and taking more advantage, and it was just enough. So I'm going to be a matchmaker. I'm not a coach, and I'm not finding people online dating. I want to work with women who are fed up with what they are doing and don't know what to do next, and introduce them to starting their own businesses. And I'm taking the angle through the franchise world, but I'm not coming out with that word first, because people hear the word franchise and they think it's like McDonald's. And there are some fabulous businesses you can get associated with that you could have a fabulous work-life balance. And that's what I'm doing. So I've introduced it on LinkedIn. And now I'm working this week on my LinkedIn profile and how I'm going to really tell people. And I've gotten some great response. Now I just need to find some good clients that want to buy businesses. But I'm excited at the age of 66, starting all over again. And I couldn't feel more excited.
Wow. Thank you for sharing, Andrea. Rina, if I'm pronouncing that correctly.
I'm close. It's Rina.
Rina. Oh, sorry.
What brought me to the session is I want in the Great Resignation. No, I'm looking to make a change. I think between COVID and some health issues on my husband's side, just realized that I need to slow down a bit and do something different and not travel as much. And although I've loved what I've done for the last 27 years, it's time.
Oop. Rina, that will be continued.
A little bit, yes.
And just Lisa, Andrea, and Melinda, all very interesting stories. So I'm looking forward to hearing today.
Thank you. Renee, you want to share why you've decided to join us today and anything that you've learned over these past 2 very odd plus years? Oop, you're muted. Renee, you're muted.
Here, I joined just the last minute. I saw Leslie's email and I thought it looked intriguing. I'm a little bit at 6 and 7s myself. I work for a nonprofit that had stopped during the pandemic and sort of casting around and not eager to do something that I'm not interested in anymore. So I thought this sounded interesting.
Great. Mary Lou, I don't know if I know Tammy's sort of multitasking, so I don't know if you want to come off mute. Mary Lou.
Hi, I am also multitasking, but I'll gladly talk. I've been an attorney for 30 plus years in the same job for 20 years, just doing lots of legal writing and research. And I too want to join the Great Resignation. I'm 57 years old and looking for a slower pace and just looking for alternatives. I've lost my zest for my job. I think working remotely almost 100% now has really changed the fabric of my career. And so I'm looking for something different.
I love the way you put that, Mary Lou. You've lost your zest.
Yes.
And Tammy just put in the chat, she's learned from the last 2 years that doing important and valuable work is important to her and not just a paycheck. And yeah, that wonderful question, can I make the jump and be brave enough? So Tammy, thank you for typing that in. Patricia just joined. Patricia, can you hear us? Do you want to share why you've joined and anything you've learned in the last 2 years?
Oh, wow. Okay. I just got on. Well, you can see my video's not on because I thought, okay, I didn't know I was going to hop on, but I got the email that said you're on live. So I thought, why not? I need to go on live.
And anything that you've learned over the last 2 years you feel like would be helpful to share?
That I've learned as far as what goes?
Well, we've been in this little pandemic for the last 2+ years. So
that I've learned in reference to what?
How you work.
Okay.
How you work, how you live. And if you don't feel like sharing, it's fine, Patricia. If nothing comes to mind.
It's all right. She was beaming in at the last minute.
Okay, sorry. So I'll quickly share a little bit about my story. I felt like...
Sorry, I lost you. Are you there?
Yeah. Who is that?
I think that's Patricia.
Patricia?
Yeah, sorry. I went outside and I lost everything. I was asking, you wanted me to share it in regards to what?
I was just, everyone has just gone around and shared anything that came to mind. And so if nothing in particular comes to mind, there's no need to share.
Okay. I'll just pass, but thank you.
You're welcome. So I guess I want to share a little bit of my journey. I was on Wall Street for close to 30 years and I always sort of see it in thirds. The first third, I loved it. It was interesting work and paid well. And the middle third, I was raising a family and not paying that much attention. And then in the last third, I had friends say to me, when it's painful enough, you'll make a change. And so as my alarm would go off every, 5:30 a.m. every morning, I'd start to ask myself like, well, is it painful enough? When then I got to the trading desk at 7 a.m., surrounded by people whose values I didn't share, doing work I no longer thought was interesting, I'd again ask myself, is it painful enough? And then when my husband would say in response to my feeling trapped by this life I had put in place, as primary breadwinner for a family of 5, he'd say, well, that's why they call it work.
Oh God, my husband uses that same phrase.
Oh my God, you're kidding me. Is it painful enough? And
it's not a hobby. That's the okay.
And then I found mindfulness practices that made me aware that I was sort of choosing to be a victim of my life. And so finally, after a one-day silent meditation retreat in November 2013, it was indeed painful enough. And I know so many of you have shared that you're either in the midst of a change or have made a change. And I'm, here to share some of the thoughts I have around transitions and the work that I do with clients around transition. I'm going to share, well, this is the presentation, which I'll share, but I don't want to keep it on the screen. But I do love this quote by Howard Thurman. Don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive and go do it. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive. Wow. So I've been on a journey. I'd love to say that I left Wall Street November 2013 and I took my time to think about what I wanted to do. And I'd love to say it's been just a straight line journey up the mountaintop. But any of you who have run your own business and have been entrepreneurs, or frankly, who are alive, that is not life. And it's, a constant exploration I'm finding of asking myself, what's the intersection of my skills with what I love to do and what the world is asking of me to contribute. So I'm hoping this, I'm planning this mini workshop, if you will, to take you through some exercises and things I've thought about for myself and that I do with clients. And that is not sort of going to give you the answer, but will help you on your exploration. And some of you have voiced that you're also helping others explore similar topics. So I'm going to start with, I keep going back and forth. I love seeing your faces, so I don't want to keep this on the whole time. But the exploration of the personal side, or defining your why, which has sort of become a very cliche topic. This is Simon Sinek. I'm sure many of you have seen his famous TED Talk or read his book, Start With Why. But we've talked about bravery. We've already mentioned on this call, bravery being behind what we do. And bravery comes, I think, from a sense that you're on the right path. I feel like when I discovered mindfulness practices, it helped me. It doesn't totally drown out all the messages from our culture that a bigger house, a nicer car, a larger bank account means success and ultimately will mean happiness. That as long as, we live here in the States, that's never going to go away. But the more you learn, and as we get older, we're really better able to hear that voice inside. And sometimes it's, we hear it through our bodies. We get up in the morning and we just feel like we're not doing the right things for ourselves. So I do like to start with this exploration of why change, especially for those of us who could have kept going. I could have kept waking up with the 5:30 a.m. alarm and sat on the trading desk. So why change? And so here are some inquiries that I have found to be very helpful for people. And Renee, you're probably multitasking, but I see you have a pencil in your mouth. Like if anybody has a pen and a paper, I'm going to read each question and then give you a minute or two to think about it and write down what comes to mind. So the first inquiry is, thinking back over your lifetime, what accomplishments have given you the greatest intrinsic rewards? Not talking about what's paid you the most, what's gotten the most accolades or outside recognition, but what accomplishments have given you the greatest intrinsic rewards? And why do you think that is? And if anybody has something to share or like to raise your hand or put something in the chat, that would be great. And the second inquiry, while you're thinking about that, it's a follow-up on the first one. What activities, paid or unpaid, currently make you feel good? What activities currently give your life a sense of meaning and purpose? And while you think about it, I guess I want to share personally, I've, my whole career on Wall Street and now continuing as a financial planner, a lot of what I do is numbers-based, is linear, is spreadsheet oriented. I was an English literature major in college, and I found myself this year, I signed up for a creative writing course. I actually went, it's at the adult school. I see a thumbs up from Leslie. I went this morning. It's been 5 Wednesdays, Wednesday mornings. Next week will be the last. I probably haven't written creatively since high school or college. It makes me feel good. Mm-hmm. And I'm sure it informs other areas of my life, from how I write stories that I share in my business to blog posts. And it's just giving me intrinsic rewards that are carrying through that I never would have given myself permission to do, probably before COVID and before this year. So I invite you all to ask that of yourselves. And then the last inquiry: what are some of the things you would like to accomplish or experience in the future? And when I ask this of clients, it's hard to ask. Sometimes adults, we have difficulty dreaming. Like we see all the boundaries and the restrictions on being able to accomplish or experience. And so this question is really, if there were none, what do you imagine? And I love that, Leslie, you said you should always reach out of your comfort zone. I've been in this period right now in my life, again, sharing, where my motto is dare to suck.
Yes. Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely. That's huge. That's where you grow. Don't you find that, Laura?
Yes. And again, I think as we age, we realize, like, I actually went to the first session of this creative writing class. There are some published authors. I was
oh my God,
so taken aback. I thought it was going to be frontal teaching, and I left. Everyone shared their stories and what they wrote, and I didn't share. And I went home and I said, this is your life. You signed up for this class. Share, ever since I've been sharing, but frankly, I said, if you don't feel like sharing, you also don't have to share, but respect yourself and stop, second guessing yourself and dare to suck. So I'm just wondering, did anything come to mind through these inquiries from anyone in the group that would like to share?
You guys are quiet today. Come on. I know you're not that quiet.
Renee?
I'll share. This is weird. So I had a bunch of operations, like medical operations, and I belong to a group now that we're swimming, and all of us have weird things, like your knees don't work, your elbows don't work, but we formed this group, and I find that it really makes me feel good, and it gives me a sense like, if I'm not there, everybody's like, oh, what happened to you? And we're worried about other people, and if somebody has to have more, things, we bring them food, and it's just a sense of community. And it's a weird thing that I never, I'm not a swimmer, come on, but I don't know. It was just out of left field that became important and makes me feel good.
Beautiful. It sounds like it's the community also. If I'm hearing you, that's part of it. It's the swimming and it's the sharing with the community and people, asking about each other. Well, you'll all get a copy of these slides afterwards. So if want to take time after the workshop to think about these things. And then I also love these questions. It's in the name of George Kinder. He's a Buddhist founder of the financial life planning movement. And these questions are to be asked in this order. And the first question being, you're financially secure. It's similar to the last question on the other slide, but you don't have to worry about money. It's not saying that you're the richest man in the world, or woman in the world, but you have enough to take care of your needs now and in the future. Well, how would you live your life? And, is there anything you would change? And what do you imagine you would do with the money? And then the question becomes progressively more pertinent, which is, you go to the doctor who tells you have 5 to 10 years left to live, and you will feel fine. You won't be suffering in that period of time, but you know that you have a finite period of time to live, and what will you do in the time that you have remaining? What would you change at that point? And then finally, the question that I have heard so many interesting answers to and learned a lot about people I work with, that you have one day left to live. So what do you regret? What dreams will be left unfulfilled? What did you wish you had done? And what did you miss? And in some ways, I feel like it's a little morbid, but I've started when I start my day, and I'm sure a lot of us have this experience of like my to-do list and a little bit of anxiety growing from how am I going to fit this all in? It's been recently my mantra to say, this is your last day. Is this how you want to spend it? Like being anxious about getting through the to-do list? What is important, and what do you want to emphasize yourself? And as much as possible, and I know it's not always possible, but to really approach my day from a place of only love. How do I want to be of service? What's the love I want to bring into the world, and chill.
Laura, do you find that COVID helped with this? I found that realizing for the first time in our lives, all of us could be dead in 2 weeks, really focused a lot of stuff. I mean, it became very real. People who I knew were fine, and 2 weeks later were gone. So did you see any changes in your clients over COVID because of that, or had they already been thinking like that?
I think the biggest change for my clients, most of whom are, families with one or two working parents, was the intimacy of both being at home as well as going to know workers and seeing the background of their lives and what was going on. And it's interesting now to see everyone in some ways reluctantly going back to normal. I do think not so much the mortality question came up, but the question of really, what is important to you?
Right.
When they saw that when you don't have the commute, you spend more time with your kids. And there was also the opposite effect of sort of the lines between work and family blurring. But I always try to bring in a values exercise when we work with the financial resources. And I think that just became in much starker relief during the pandemic of like, really, what is important to me and how can I shift my life to emphasize what's important? And I'm wondering how these coming months, how much that will fade, or whether that will stay top of mind for people.
I would love to know, can I just ask, does anybody here feel that shift? Have you guys, is it, post-pandemic that you're feeling that kind of shift?
Lisa?
I will tell you, I'm seeing a lot of shifts, a lot of blending of the work with home, but also personally and with my clients, they do not want to return to full-time office. They're looking for hybrid work. They are looking for fully remote work. It is a job turn off if the company says you've got to come back full-time. Company clients are really needing to adapt to, we thought everybody was going to come back to work, but we're not. We can't get the staff with the great regulations. We can't be a desirable employer if we're telling them that they have to come into the office, and they're finding their employee pool is much wider when they can accept, remote work. So expectations on both sides are very much changing. And employees are willing to step up to say, no, you want me. This is what I need if you truly want me. So the way they're engaging at work is different from everything I'm seeing personally and in my business.
Thanks for sharing that, Lisa. And Renee, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I also have a question. Like what's happening with me is after the pandemic, I thought it was great. I wanted to get out. I live in New York. I meet all these people. Like, I'll go, go, go. And now I'm feeling like, no, I just want to go back to my screen. It's very weird. Like, I don't want that. I don't know if anybody else is feeling that. Like, I'm much happier in this little box that I'm in, my little box, rather than being there and doing. Does anybody else feel that? I think it's a weird.
I'm getting out in very small doses though, and a little dab will do me right now. It's fun to go do something, but I don't feel. I was talking to a friend. She said a few years ago we were going to events 2, sometimes 3 nights a week. She goes, "That was so exhausting. What were we thinking?" I said, "I know." I said, "So it has to be fun." I wasn't looking for a job. I wouldn't have gone somewhere that wasn't a truly great place to work. They exist with wonderful people. As they put it, that one person doesn't work here. They don't hire. It is, so I work from home some, but I actually enjoy coming to an office with other great people and don't have a beating of a commute. So it was great that there were suddenly possibilities to do things like that and opening up. And our clients the same way. Almost all my clients who work for a PR agency are outside of our Dallas base. So everything was already Zoom anyway, and that just feels normal because we're all over the country.
Rena, you had your hand up?
Yeah, it was a thumbs up. I fully agree with what Renee was saying. I found that, well, it doesn't help if you're in a work environment that's really not ideal, where it's a little bit toxic, and to be away from people is actually nice. And so now I can choose my interactions and actually meet up with people that I enjoy being with. And I also do it in small doses, but I'm very happy being at home and enjoying that part, because I used to spend so much time away. It's been really nice, and picking up a hobby, and it's been fantastic. It made me realize you can slow down. The world, the sky doesn't fall down, and things still get done. So it's been great.
Yeah, that's true. Now, I guess I want to echo back to you. I know myself to be an introvert, and so I can easily just get caught up in this beautiful space of my office and never leave. And then I'm also aware how much energy I get from being with other people. So it's always sort of trying to titrate the two, that if I'm alone too much, I can get down. But as you said, Melinda, when back in the day when like every night there was something else going on, I feel like that would exhaust me to do that again. So now I'm going to move on to go back to these. Thanks everyone for sharing. And then just go to the technical side. I find that the clarity that one gets from understanding your financial situation helps when you consider making a transition, because when you change your life, your finances change. And when your finances change, it has an impact on your life. Certainly, the change I made had an impact on my family's life. I sold my 6,000 square foot house on an acre of land and moved into a smaller house. I sold our vacation home. I shopped differently. I made different choices, and I'm so happy that I did. I would never want to go back to work with the people I worked with before, especially in this political environment. I can't even imagine that I could do it. These are rules of thumb that I know many of us might take for granted, but so helpful. So if you're looking at potentially leaving a job to start something new, or if you advise others to do that, make sure that you have a good sense of what your expenses are and have a number of months up to a year of cash in the bank account to pay for those expenses. As many of us know, and I had seen Leslie shaking her head earlier, it no matter how long you think it's going to take you till you start to actually generate some income from a business you start, it's going to take that much longer. Or if you're looking for another job, you don't want to ultimately be forced to take another job that you're not really excited about just because the money is running out. So build an emergency fund before you actually take the leap. If you own a home and you have equity in the house, it's sort of a nice way to have a closet emergency fund, if you will. Put a home equity line in place. You're not going to be able to put one in place if you don't have income that you could show the bank. So while you do, put it in place. You don't even have to draw down upon it, but you know that that's there if you need it. And of course, pay off any high cost debt that you might have, whether it's credit card debt or anything else. You want to be as financially stable as possible when you take this big leap of faith. And that's one way. Now, these are the questions that you need to ask yourself before making any big financial change. So I always like to look at people's households, if you will, like a business. So you have certain expenses that, at least over a relatively short period of time, are fixed. So I always like to say you're sleeping all month. Somehow you're exhausted. Doesn't matter. You're still going to pay your rent or your mortgage. You're going to pay your electric bill. You're going to pay your car loan. You're going to pay your utilities. You're going to, I don't know if you have Netflix or Hulu or cable, whatever the expenses are that are going to be paid for, whether or not you choose to. And they're often numbers that you know ahead of time. Do the exercise, take a piece of paper, write down what those expenses are. And then what expenses go away when you're not working? And some of these, frankly, with COVID might have gone away already, but I'm just on the outskirts of New York City. I had my Metro North train that I paid for every month. And I had my parking at the train station every month. And yeah, I did wear nice. I mean, as I sit here in my jeans and sneakers, I had a nice wardrobe. Partially, I think it was like treating myself for the pain of having to go into work every day. So yeah, I had nice handbags and nice shoes, and all that went away. So you can look at what you're spending and see what's going to go away if you're no longer commuting into an office, if that's your choice for a change. And conversely, what do you have to be able to cover each month? And have you accumulated enough from your savings to help cover a portion of your lifestyle? And some people are lucky enough to have partners that might be able to help out and cover a portion. A big question is going to be, how are you going to have health insurance if you're not yet 65 years old? You really need to be able to answer that before you leave. And then other sources of income. Can you use your skills to work as a consultant? That might actually be what you're planning to start. And maybe your first client can actually be the company you're working for now. And then the big question, and frankly, what I decided to do, are there other things I can do with my skills that pay less, but really, I will enjoy more, speak to my enjoyment of other people, of helping people with their lives, as opposed to, adding more basis points to an institution's portfolio. In answering those questions for myself, that is what led me. I realized I certainly couldn't do it with the lifestyle I was living, but I was more than happy to change that lifestyle in order to start to move in that direction. So if anyone has questions about that. And then there's, other things to consider. And actually, I know if you're thinking of leaving a job, frankly, I have a client who just left a large tech company, and, turns out that he had a lot of, unpaid vacation time that he was able to take with him. And actually unbelievably, like he left Facebook and a $3,000 perk while he had already resigned. Like, okay, he could spend his, his wellness perk in one lump sum as he was leaving. So are there any benefits you have from your employer that you can take advantage of? And then
can I interrupt for 1 second? The big thing that kept everybody, and I don't know if it's changed, but it kept me in a job for a very long time, was healthcare. What are there new things that have come up in the last few years since COVID, or is it still that same old struggle? I mean, when I left, we had, I think we were paying, because it was, we were still handling the kids. The kids were still on our healthcare. It was, I want to say like $3,500, $4,000 a month for healthcare. I mean, it was ridiculous. Do people still have that problem? Are there new things out there? That keeps a lot of people in jobs they don't want to be in, don't you?
It does. I have to say it's embarrassing for a country like the United States to have such a dysfunctional health system that depends upon employment. So that I have a client right now who just left, and he's paying like $1,600 a month for COBRA.
Yeah, and that's half. He's probably paying half, right?
Right, because he doesn't have any dependents. It's still, it happens to be he has good benefits from it. But yes, I have vendors I work with that help with like the state health exchange, but that's really the only thing that's available. If you, or if you're part of some, like I think through, if I wasn't on my husband's healthcare through the Financial Planning Association, I could get health benefits, but they're expensive.
Right. That's one of the big barriers still then. Yeah.
And that was my problem. I've been self-employed since 1991, and I was spending a fortune for our family for many years until I turned 65, a year ago. And it got much worse. You used to spend a lot, but you got fabulous insurance. And then it became, I had one hospital in Manhattan that I had to have on my plan. And it got to the point there was only one company that took Sloan, and I had to keep changing every year. And now being old is great. It's just,
I know, it's not finally taken care of. I've never felt
it's not cheap. You still have to pay for the supplement and all that. It's not cheap, but it's much cheaper.
Right.
Yeah.
That's why you need Medicare for all. No, it really
right.
When I had my own business, my health insurance for me, my husband's on Medicare, thank God. That was my largest expense by far. And just by going to become an employee again with health, I've thanked the owner multiple times. I'm the most excited person about our plan, because it was like a $12,000 raise just not having to pay my insurance anymore. Right. Yes, it's deductible, but still.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So nothing's changed.
Yeah, nothing's changed, unfortunately.
Okay. Can I ask, you also have long-term health care insurance on here. And I've heard that they go out of business. Like my person said not to have that. Like the recommendation was on the long-term care insurance. Can I ask your
It really, so I do recommend, and I do get quotes for everyone I work with to get long-term care insurance. I also have long-term care insurance for myself and my husband. There are fewer and fewer companies that actually underwrite long-term care insurance because of how horrible it worked out for all these companies that did write it. I don't know if any of your parents had mine didn't, but my in-laws did, and they had sort of like unlimited. And of course, the insurance companies assume that over time people drop their policies and they wouldn't have to pay out. And what happened, people are living longer, but with dementia, and we're not dropping their policies. And so you're right, Renee, that, for example, Genworth, who still, I don't know that they're writing new policies, but we're a long-term insurance provider, and their finances are questionable. So people have not been writing new policies with them. It really depends if you have a history of dementia in your family, if you have a history of a long life in your family. And it's also sort of threading the needle that if you don't have enough assets, it's going to be expensive to pay, continuously. On the other hand, if you have I'm going to pick a number, over $5 million, you could probably self-insure. So there's no clear-cut answer, and nobody likes paying money for insurance in general that has a possibility of not being used. There's also hybrid policies that are life insurance policies, whole life insurance policies, as opposed to term. That is some permanent insurance that can be used towards long-term care. And on the one hand, people tend to like that better because you're not just setting a fire to money if you're not going to use it. On the other hand, it's much more expensive, where like a premium for just long-term care insurance could be in the low thousands, still money. You'll add a zero onto that. You'd be paying more like $10,000 a year, give or take, to buy some permanent insurance that has long-term care. So yeah, I come from a history. My mother had dementia, and so I wanted to have some insurance in place. And the same thing for things that people don't think about. You leave your employer, you sort of take it for granted that you have some disability insurance coverage, you have some life insurance coverage. And certainly it all depends on your circumstances. But if you have a family that depends on your income, and a mortgage and other liabilities and others that depend on you, that if something were to have happened to you, I always like to say yesterday, that you replace what's being provided by your employer. And then finally, the question of considering relocating. I know we're all in different areas of the country. I live in one of the most expensive areas of the country to live, and having experienced the ability to sell a house where I raised my children and that I was in for 20 years, and not only did my life go on, but I love the house I'm living in now. It's that I have that much more knowledge that if I end up feeling at some point that I'm restricted by the cost of maintaining this home, I can sell it and live somewhere else that's cheaper to live, and has a lower cost of living, lower taxes, etc.
Cost of living, I will just tell you guys I was up where Laura is in Westchester for 24 years and New York for 40, never thought a second about what I was paying, or it was just, that's where publishing was. I had no choice. I had to be there. And now that we've left there, we're still in sticker shock down in New Orleans, because we were so used to paying like the most expensive for everything, that when they don't charge you, the cost of living down here in general is about 1/3 to 1/5 on some things.
Really?
You think that they're not giving you the service. It's like when I would go for my mammogram and it was $750, and I come here, it's $175. I'm like, do you do both? Maybe the other one? Like, are you doing both? Are you using a machine? Are you using the right machine? And, and these are developed, their hospitals are actually doing better things than up there, but we were so conditioned that there is no other thought. And it's an interesting thought for reinvention, that if you don't want to stay where you are, to change, to free yourself up, is a really interesting concept. It's a big concept, but it's just interesting.
Right. To realize that you actually do have a choice in where you live.
If you do.
Right. Again, it's interesting with COVID that you may very well have more of a choice than you did before.
Yes. Well, now, yes.
Okay.
Yes. The young people are doing that. The young people have all left the big cities. They're not going to be held hostage in their little teeny weeny apartments anymore that they, pay billions of dollars for. So they're on to something.
So I'll run through these pretty quickly because I know we're getting close to the end, but I always recommend, first of all, being mindful of what you're spending, because people get very constricted around, oh my God, I have to put a budget together. And I just feel like, just be mindful of what you're spending. Let's start with that. And what the recurring expenses that I talked about at the beginning, sort of the overhead in your life, ideally, and this is harder to do in the big cities, that's not more than 50% of what you're bringing home, not your gross income, but what's actually deposited in your bank account each month. Either you're earning it on your own or it's a W-2 income. But if you make it that much higher, then you're going to choke yourself, and you won't have room for fun, and you won't have room to have savings for that, emergency fund that you need. And so for clients that need it, and frankly, for myself, when I changed my life, I sort of decided what I wanted to spend on fun each week. And I put it in a separate checking account, and I only use a debit card for my fun stuff. And I can see, like, oh, I thought I'd spend this much each week, and it's Wednesday and I've spent it already. And then I can elect to put more money in the account, but it's so much easier than saying, oh, I'm going to find a Sunday to go through my credit card bills, which I just never did. I can still scare myself in how much I spend on what I think is not particularly extravagant, but at least now I know. And I love an exercise and would encourage all of you to sort of name your top 3 to 5 values, whether it's family or community or friendship or philanthropy or recreation, but name those values and then watch how you spend. And not everything, of course, is going to correlate to your values, but see if your spending is in alignment with what you really believe to be true about what's important to you. And you might be surprised at what you find. And then finally, and this is, I'm always talking to myself when I'm talking to you guys, which is it true that you're going to be unhappy if your income changes to less than, what you were earning working for someone else, or what you're earning in the job that you're hoping you'll develop the courage to leave? That was my story. And still grappling, with the second, with the small g, but really, I think we all, as life changes, redefine success for ourselves. And, do you need a prestigious title? Do you need this many likes on your social media posts? What do you need? What's the story you're telling yourself about what you need to be successful? And again, just question it. Just be aware of what that story is. And finally, I'm a big believer in any kind of mindfulness practice. Take a moment each day to just sit and connect to your breath, or find a friend to text first thing in the morning what you're grateful for. Nurture your relationship. Something I didn't do for a long time, working on a trading desk with a bunch of dudes. And now I really actively cultivate my friendships and make time for my friends. And a relationship with trust and faith, however you define it, because you're going to need that relationship during challenging times. And then making time for self-care. Get enough sleep, easier said than done. Move your body. And I do put self-care. I find women tend to, cross it off their list, but understand your finances, understand your financial situation. Feel like I ran through that pretty quickly. I wanted to be mindful of the time. Happy again to share these slides afterwards.
Those will come to everybody with the follow-up letter that you'll get. We have 2 minutes for questions, and then I'm just going to tell you what's coming at Covey. And we have our spinner where Laura's giving away a consultation. So does anybody have a quick question? Are you ready for the spinner? Oh, Patricia, go ahead. Go ahead.
Hi, you know what? I just want to tell you how much I enjoy getting together. I was on the run sitting down, and I want to tell you how much I enjoy getting together with a lot of women, just kind of sharing where we are and what we're doing. But I wanted to talk about success, the definition of success. And what I have found is that my definition of success has changed from my 20s to my 30s. And right now to my 60s, it's so different. And I think it's important what you were talking about is kind of identifying where you get your energy from. And I think that, in my mind, for me, will lead me to my definition of success. But But I just want to thank you. This has been really enjoyable.
Great.
Thank you, Patricia.
Awesome. Let's do our giveaway. We have Casey's ready. So Laura, thank you. What a great conversation. You're amazing. I love you. You're always so thoughtful. You scare me when it's supposed to be financial, but it's never scary like that, you know? So I appreciate that. And I think there's a lot for us to think about and talk about, and we'll bring you back again because you're always so thoughtful. So what a great way to end at 2:01. Thank you so much, Laura. You're always such a treat. Thank you. Thank you all for spending time. It's always wonderful. Thanks, guys. Have a great week, and we will see you soon. Ciao, guys.